The job of an interrogator is to find holes in stories and timelines.
You wanted me. Here I am.
They succeed when discrepancies are uncovered. And when it comes to applying for a home loan, this is the bank's role. They're looking for anything and everything to say no to your application. And the best way to avoid this is to preempt it. In today's video, I'm going to show you 4 ways to do just this, step by step, so keep watching. 1. Non-disclosure. As technology becomes more pervasive, telling white lies on your application only gets harder. The easiest way to get around this is to tell the bank the truth, avoiding the question in the first place, and more importantly, stopping your application from being declined. Here's a real life example of non-disclosure. When I met Steve, he was looking to buy a property, and he had told us he was single, buying a home on his own. When we completed our checks, we did everything we normally do, reviewing transactions and checking for any irregularities. Steve's application was clean. Everything was straightforward, having a great deposit, long-term employment, strong serviceability, and everything he declared married up nicely to the information he provided. When we submitted his application, we put Steve down as single, just as he declared, and more importantly, there was no information we found to say otherwise. Days later, the bank replied with a decline. We were perplexed. Steve's application was as good as they came. And when we read the bank's decline letter, it simply said that Steve didn't meet their lending criteria. Looking for further clarity, I called up the bank's assessor to find out the real reason. The assessor picked up the phone and told me that she had completed a quick Facebook search, finding that Steve was not in fact single, having recently proposed to his long-term girlfriend. This couldn't be further from the truth. I was personally shocked. I couldn't believe it. Having done a quick Facebook search myself, I too found the same thing. It's all there in the public domain for all to see. Needless to say, there wasn't much we could do to overturn this decision. So keep this in mind when applying for a home loan. The bank has no boundaries. The easiest way to avoid disclosure is to simply declare your situation in full and unabridged. 2. Joke transactions. I get it. It's a guilty pleasure transferring money to a mate with a nefarious description. Whether it's money for bail or an explicit drug, you have a little giggle. I mean, who really reads these transaction statements anyways? I mean, it's not like the banks report suspicious transactions, right? Well, to you and I, it's obviously a joke, but for the bank, it's a different story. And in recent years, the banks have come under increased scrutiny by AUSTRAC, the regulator for preventing and detecting criminal abuse in the financial system. Banks have an obligation to flag all suspicious transactions to the regulator, and failing to do so can result in a fine which can be substantial. And recently we saw one bank actually hit with a $1.3 billion in penalties. With the banks leaning more and more on technology to report dubious transactions and penalty for failing to do so significant, it's likely your joke transactions are being flagged to the regulator. And more importantly, having an impact on your home loan application, leaving a high chance for the bank's algorithm to make an unfavorable decision on your application. So at best, these joke transactions will be questioned by an assessor, and worse, it could mean a decline to your application. The good news is that it's an easy fix, and you might consider sending your mate a link to this video so they're on the same page. Either way, it's best to let them know that you're going to have to get your kicks another way. And if you end up liking this video, remember, consider subscribing. 3. Savings history. Years ago, a bank assessed Sherry's application, who was one of our customers. Each month, she'd receive her salary in her everyday account, where she'd automatically transfer $4,000 to her savings account. Her salary and savings account were 2 separate accounts. Sherry was buying a home for $365,000. When the bank's assessor picked up her application and reviewed, they asked us to explain where this $4,000 that was hitting her savings account each month mysteriously was coming from. And without looking at Sherry's salary account, one could be forgiven to ask this question. As you can imagine, the assessor was quite embarrassed when we pointed out that the money was coming from Sherry's salary and that it could be found by looking at the salary account we had sent them. Needless to say, the assessor very promptly approved our loan. And there is a lesson for us to learn here. The general rule of thumb is that any transaction over 1% of the purchase price, so for example, if you're buying a home for $500,000, it'd mean a transaction over $5,000 will need to be explained to the bank. The reason the bank will want to know is because if the money was received from a loan, it'll change the bank's assessment decision. So if your parents in the past have chipped in, it's not a big issue. The banks will just want to know the term. So if it was a gift and not a loan, then happy days. 4. Simplify and explain. Aim to close down as many lending services as possible. This includes buy now, pay later, and any other debts such as credit cards or personal loans. The next thing you want to do is explain anything outside the box, and this primarily relates to your transaction history. Here are a few examples in what we've seen in the past. Loans to parents. So if you're paying installments back to your parents for lending you some money for a car, the bank will want to know this. They'll see these payments in your transaction listings. All the bank will want to know is the terms of this and for it to be included in your application. Baby gifts. If you have a friend or family member with a newborn, you might be finding that you have a fair amount of transactions to retailers such as baby bunting. The bank's immediate thought is that you have something that you're hiding. So before they get any ideas, it's best just to explain your situation. Probably one of the worst things I've ever seen a bank do is decline one of our customers point blank without even giving us a chance to explain their situation. Jane was a single applicant excelling in her career, kicking goals and about to buy her first home. Having no help from family, she had worked very hard and saved up and was a real inspiration to us. Upon receipt of her application, the bank simply declined it. Having reviewed her transactions, uncovered payments to an IVF clinic. Her application was rejected on the spot for non-disclosure and a servicing shortfall, as the bank assumed a dependent child. Jane, in fact, was not looking to conceive, nor did she have a partner. She'd gone to an IVF clinic to freeze her eggs. And after informing the bank of this, they overturned their decision. So remember, the banks have trigger fingers. It's likely they'll decline your application on the spot, no questions asked. So once a bank's made a decision, it can be very hard and time consuming to overturn. And therefore, it's always best to preempt to prevent. And there you have it. Remember, if you like this video, feel free to click that like and subscribe button. Here at Hunter Galloway, we get home loans approved. So if you live in Australia and looking for a mortgage broker, we can help. Simply reach out and visit us online at www.huntergalloway.com.au or call us on 1300 088 065. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.